Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to today's session. In this part, we are going to learn a new data type in Python called a dictionary. So, let's start our today's session. And we are going to do that by modifying our application and modifying how users can actually input the values. Now, our program currently takes the number of days and turns it into a number of hours. What if we wanted to make our program a little bit more advanced, a little fancier, and basically allow users to also decide what units it should be converted to? So the user gives us the number of days and tells us whether to convert it into hours or minutes. So instead of the whole list, now we are going to get just the number of days and the conversion units, and this change may be a little bit complex in terms of syntax. So I will try to explain everything step by step. So the first thing we need to do is adjust how we get input from the user. So now we want the user to be able to give us the number of days and units in one input. So first of all, I'm going to adjust the text here, enter a number of days and a conversion unit. Now, there are a lot of different ways we can allow a user to do that. But what we want to do is something like this as an input. So basically, the number of days colon and minutes, or number of days and hours. Again, this is our own decision. We decide how the user input should look like, but this should be a nice way of providing both of those values, generally colon separated. So instead of a list, we are going to have a single input with two values that are separated by a colon. So on the next line, I'm going to change this split here into a column, and this will give us user input this whole value split into two values as a list. This is going to be day and days and unit. So list with these two values, and let's actually get rid of this for loop, because we are not iterating through a list of numbers anymore. And to begin with, let's just print out the output, or the result of days and unit variables. So I'm gonna refresh and let's do 2 hours and enter, and this is what we get. So splitting this string on column will give us a list with elements 10 and hours, and note that 10 is still a string, right? Because that's how we get the input. And now from those two values, we are going to create a value of a data type called dictionary. So in Python, we have another data type called the dictionary, which basically looks like this. So you have curly braces just like we had for a set, and inside we have key value pairs. So we don't have just single elements like this, but rather we have key value pairs. So the key in our case is days, and the value of that key in our case would be 10. And then comma separated another value would be unit and a string hour. So basically this is the syntax of a dictionary, and obviously the difference between a list and a dictionary is that we have descriptions for each of our values represented as key value pairs. So we want to create this construct right here from those two values, and since this is a data type, we can create a value and assign it to a variable of that data type. So let's call it days and unit dictionary equals, and obviously we don't want those values to be hard coded here. We want to get it from the list. Now, how do we access an element of a list? How do we grab the first value, which is 10, out of that list? And to do that, there is a syntax to access the elements in the list. The list name, and then you have square brackets and index of the element, which, if you remember, you already learned in the section of list. So again, days of the unit list is this one right here, and with index 0 we are accessing the first element, index 1 is the second element, and so on. An index is basically just location. This is location 0, location 1, and so on. So this will give us the first value, and obviously the second value is going to be with the same syntax with index 1. Let's actually print that one out as well, so that we see the results. Restart the application. Let's do 10 hours. So again, this is our list of 10 hours as two separate values, and this is a dictionary that we created using those two values. So we have key value pairs, and the same way for minutes we would end up with a dictionary that looks like this. So now we have these two pieces of information in one variable, and now we can give that variable to our function so that it does the validation first of all of the number and calculation based on the units. So on the next line we are going to call our validate and execute function, and as you see we have this red line here because something is wrong. First of all, we don't have this variable called num of days element anymore because we deleted the for loop. Instead, we have days and unit dictionary, and here we are validating the integer value of the input number, and the same way we need to validate this input number here as well. So now the question is, how do we access a specific value? In this case, the value of days here in a dictionary, because we have to validate this value as well, because I might as well have entered text instead of this number. So the way to access values inside a dictionary is again using the square brackets, just like we did for list, but instead of an index. Index 0 or index 1, we don't need to use an index because we actually have a key. So instead of index, we are going to use the key like days, a unit, and this will give us value of 30, which will then be converted into an integer and then validate right here. So again, I'm gonna copy this for comparison. So to access an element of a list, let's say my list here, and let's do 10, 30, doesn't matter. In order to access the elements of that list, we can do that using an index. So this will basically print number 30. Again, if we had other elements here, we can do index 2, so that will print out 200. And let's actually check that. And remember, to comment out a multi-line code, we can use 3 quotes at the beginning and at the end. Let's refresh, and there you go, 200 was printed. Let's do the same with the dictionary. So we have a dictionary day like this, and to access an element inside that dictionary, we use the square brackets, and instead of the index like here on the list, we use the key itself. And again, I am going to print this, and there you go. You see value 10, and I can also access unit value, and if I execute it, I see hours and so on. And I can add any number of key value pairs in my dictionary as I want. So, for example, I can add a message here, all good, and I can access that message like this. So this is how you create a dictionary, and that's how you access the values in a list or in a dictionary. So let's clean this up, comment in our code again like this, and get back to our code. So basically, again, this is how we access the number of days in our dictionary, and in our days to units function, we need both of those values, and we can pass in those values separately. So we already have a user input number from the dictionary, and the second value would be the unit from the dictionary. However, we have to add that second parameter to our function. So let's do that unit. Let's call it a conversion unit. So now we are passing both of these values to our function. So we have the user input number here, which is already converted into an integer, and the second one, which is the conversion unit. Now we can finish the logic in this function here. Right now we are using this hard-coded calculation to units, which are 24, and number of units, which are hard-coded hours. So first of all, I am going to remove those two. We don't need them anymore because we get those values from the user, and now we have to substitute those two. So here we are going to check if the conversion unit in hours equal hours, then we are going to return calculation with hours. It's going to be 24. And conversion unit here, we can also hard code hours here because we know it's hours. Else, if so, if the conversion unit is minutes, then we can return calculation for minutes and a text like this. And it could also be that the conversion unit that was provided is none of those, or maybe some invalid text. And in this case, we are gonna add final validation. So if it's neither hour nor minutes, then we are just gonna say, you know what, unsupported unit. So basically we don't do conversions other than those two. So we just tell the user that's an unsupported unit. Now if we execute our program and enter value, there you go. We have our output. And the same way, if we do 80 days to hours, we have our calculation in hours. So that's how dictionaries work. We can do one final thing here, and as usual, print out the type of our dictionary. There you go. You see a class of type dictionary here, which is another data type, and at this point we can actually summarize all the data types that we have learned so far. So let's give us some space here. So the first one was a string. So generally a message or some output like this, that's our string. Then we have integers. Example of that we saw already days. Then we have float numbers, which for example can be used for price or weight of a product, etc. We also have learned Boolean data types when we check some kind of condition whether it's true or not. For example, is it a valid number or is the user input exit? We also learned a data type of list. So for example, uses list of days like this, including duplicate values, and list data type can be used for strings as well, not only for numbers. So for example, we having A list of months like January doesn't really matter. We also learned a data type called set, and set generally is very similar to list, but it doesn't allow duplicate values, and its syntax is with curly braces. So the same way we can have numbers or strings or booleans or any other data types inside a set. And the last one that we learned was a dictionary. And let's take our own example, day in unit. And dictionary is a collection of key value pairs, and the syntax is written like this. So why do we need all these different data types? Well, depending on the use case or exactly what you're trying to achieve in the program, you're going to need a different data type to achieve exactly that. So each data type has its own specific purpose, and throughout these days to the unit calculator, I tried to demonstrate the purpose of each data type and when we need to use them. So these are all the data types that we learned. These are also most of the data types available in Python, and the main ones that you are going to be working with. So this should give you a good foundational knowledge about data types in Python. And also note that most of these data types you will also encounter in any other programming languages, because as I said, these are the core data types, and most of the programming languages actually support these data types as well. So this is all about today's session, which was based on dictionary data type. In the next session, we will work on modules. If you guys have any doubt or any question, you can ask me in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching.